Audition, or hearing as it's more commonly known as, is a really interesting sense from a physiological standpoint. And here we have some of the basic anatomy of the ear. And what you want to think about here is the ear in terms of three separate areas. So first and foremost, you have the outer ear. And the outer ear is comprised of our earlobe and the ear canal. And believe it or not, the earlobe is actually functional. It allows sound waves to be more easily funneled inside the ear. So, if you're like me and you have big earlobes, consider that a blessing. All right, so the first thing we have to consider, I guess I should have backed up, sound waves are what matter here. Sound waves are traveling through the environment and they enter our ear. The first stop is the outer ear. Those sound waves are funneled into the ear canal where they enter the middle ear. The middle ear has what we see here, the eardrum, which is this thin membrane, and that starts to vibrate. And when the eardrum starts to vibrate, that then sends those vibrations to these tiny little bones behind the eardrum called the malleus, incus, and stapes. I believe these are the smallest bones in the human body. And when these bones start to vibrate, those vibrations are then sent to the inner ear. And the inner ear is where the magic occurs. That's where transduction happens. So again, what is transduction? It means to take information from the outside world and turn it into something our brain can perceive. And remember, our brain is, it's just a bag of meat. It doesn't perceive anything except for electrochemical patterns. So that means that the brain has to receive that signal. And where does it occur? The inner ear. So this snail-like structure known as the cochlear, there is fluid inside there. So all those vibrations cause the fluid to start to move around. And that vibrating fluid causes these little tiny hair cells to move around. And when those hair cells move around, that is what triggers action potentials. So those hair cells are actually neural receptors, or just neurons, that are, of course, capable of sending signals to the brain. Okay, so that detailed information can be found in the textbook. This slide also has some of that information. Let's just cover a couple other aspects of hearing. Down at the bottom here we have, number one, loudness. And that is determined by the amplitude of sound waves. So if we had a readout of a sound wave, giant waves like this would be perceived as louder compared to smaller waves. Pitch, on the other hand, we're talking about like a high pitch or a low pitch, that is determined by wavelength or frequency. In other words, if you have a really slow wave like that with long frequency, that's going to be a low-pitch sound. On the other hand, high frequency, in other words, waves that occur faster, is perceived by the brain as a higher pitch. Finally, last but not least, how do we determine where a sound is coming from? How do we perceive sound location? This is where it's beneficial to have two ears. To be honest, the brain, although we might not actually be able to detect this difference, the brain absolutely is aware of sound waves striking this ear faster than this ear if sound is coming from this direction, and vice versa if sound is coming from this direction. So the difference in arrival between both ears gives the brain information about where sound is coming from. But again, we have to back up and talk about the overarching topic in this chapter, which is perception. Another way we can obviously determine sound location is using multisensory interaction. In other words, if I hear something, I might look around with my eyes or my visual sensory system to look for something that looks as though it is giving off sound. So for example, if you're in a room full of people and you hear somebody speaking, and then you turn around and you see somebody's lips moving and their arms are moving with a lot of body movement, you're probably going to perceive that individual as the producer of sound. So yes, we do receive information from a bottom-up standpoint. In other words, the ears alone take in information. But from a top-down standpoint, we use our expectations and multisensory interaction to bring about the overall perception of audition or hearing.